We're in Romans chapter 2, and this is a difficult chapter to make sense of at first glance, so we're going to be jumping between. Normally we teach out of the New King James. We'll also be teaching from the Living to try and get a handle on what Paul is talking about. And when we look at this chapter, we've got to think about two things. Firstly, we need to have a good grasp on the society of the day. That's one of the problems, that we've got to go back and be what it was like living as a Jew in that time, because this particular part of chapter 1, Paul gives a broad sweep of what's happening to society, and then in chapter 2, he comes down and he starts talking to the Jewish people who've become Christians. And this was a major change for them. It was a cultural change. It wasn't just a change of becoming a belief system. It was, Judaism was everything in life. It's the way they lived. It's the way they thought. It's the way they saw the world. And here he is in this chapter addressing these people and saying, guys, you've got to get your worldview sorted out. So you need a good grasp on the society of the day, which philosophically and spiritually was very much different to our own. And one major difference was secularism, which today we have strongly humanism operating in our society. It was non-existent in those days. It didn't exist. And the people of the day were very spiritually aware. And the difference in society was based on whom you worshipped. Was it Diana? Or was it Caesar? Was it God? Was it Christ? Or the Antichrist? And the second thing we need to get a good grasp on, if we need to understand the second chapter of Romans, was that the Jewish mentality and spirituality and their traditions, it's difficult to really comprehend their worldview because everything was almost entirely different. Their culture was totally tied up with how they related to God. And there was a set of rules that they related to God with, and it wasn't done necessarily solely by the word as we are as Christians. And having said that, the chapter has some wonderful truths that encourage us in our Christian work and to walk. And to make it easier to understand, I'll be quoting somewhat from the Living Bible as well as the New King James. Now, the subject matter of this chapter is judgment. And God will deal with those who have never heard the gospel of Christ. A good question I've often heard asked is this: how does a loving God condemn man to hell? And the passage of Scripture clearly answers these important questions. For if we're talking about judgment, it's good to consider the biblical doctrine. And here's the biblical doctrine. It's found in Hebrews 9:27, great verse. It says, "And it is appointed to men to die once, and after death, the judgment." So that's the basic thesis that we're working around. And with that in mind, turn to Romans 2. And remember last week we looked at what started the decline of civilization. 4 steps. Firstly, society becomes confused about deity, Then it gets confused about humanity. Thirdly, it gets confused about sexuality. And lastly, it gets confused about depravity. And those are the 4 steps that you can see happening in our own society today. Now, in this chapter, Paul answers the 3 great questions of life. Here they are. Number 1, why does a loving God condemn man to hell? And the second question is what about those who don't know God, who have never heard the news of the gospel? How are they treated at the judgment? And thirdly, I've been a good person all my life. Won't I go to heaven? 3 questions. And Paul answers them all in this chapter. The first point he makes is this, is that judgment is inevitable. We're all going to die. We're all going to be judged. Romans 2, 1-5, and the Living Bible says, well, you may be saying what terrible people you have been talking about. But wait a minute, you are just as bad. When you say they are wicked and should be punished, you're talking about yourselves, for you do these same things. And we know that God in justice will punish anyone who does things as these. Do you not know that God will judge and condemn others for doing them and overlook you when you do them too? Don't you realize how patient he is being with you, or don't you care? Can't you see that he's been waiting all this time without punishing you to give you time to turn from your sin? His kindness is meant to lead you to repentance. But no, you won't listen. And so you are saving up terrible punishment for yourselves because of your stubbornness in refusing to turn from your sin, for there is going to become a day of wrath when God will be the judge, the just judge of all the world. Somehow we all know that, don't we? We all have that inner awareness that in the end, God is the just judge. Have you ever been annoyed at what someone does? You know, they're little picadillos that really get up your nose. And you wonder why they keep on doing it. And what Paul is writing here and saying is, here's the reason why you get upset. It's because you're so familiar with the problem, because you've got it yourself. Always remember, when you're pointing the finger at someone, there's at least 3 pointing back at you. Interesting verse. You're an inexcusable man, O man, for when you judge, you who judge do exactly the same thing. Often the reason we so readily see a problem in other people is because we're familiar with the problem, because we live with it in our own lives. So be careful when you point the finger at someone else, because there's always 3 pointing back at yourself. You know, we love to judge others, but we rarely remember that one day we're all going to be judged, and after death, the judgment. We're all going to have to answer. And Paul goes on in verse 3 and says, do you think that God is going to overlook you? He's giving you time right now to turn from your sin. I remember one day travelling down to Hamilton along the new motorway, expressway, and I passed a on-ramp, and I looked in my rear vision mirror and I saw a traffic cop sitting up the on-ramp. And I glanced down at my speedo and I was exceeding the speed limit. And just as I went past him, his lights went on, and he came flying down after me, but he passed me, and he stopped the car in front of me. What a sense of relief that was.
Did you feel sorry for the guy in front of you?
No, but I was very happy for myself. The guy in front of me had sinned. He deserved what he was going to get. You're inexcusable, O man, for any of you who judge, you do exactly the same thing. So why does a loving God condemn man to hell? The answer is very simple. He doesn't. We condemn ourselves to where we're going to go by the way we act. And when we die, or where we go after we die is our choice. God does not want anyone to go to hell, but he wants everyone heaven bound. But it's our choice. Verse 4. Or do you despise the richness of his goodness, forgiveness, talking about God, and long-suffering, not knowing that the goodness of God leads you to repentance? Or in the Living Bible, this is what it says. Don't you realize how patient God is being with you? Or don't you care? Can't you see that he has been waiting all this time without punishing you to give you time to turn from your sin? His kindness is meant to lead you to repentance. And this is where the righteousness of God is balanced by his love and his mercy. It's the goodness of God that leads us to repentance. God is good. All the time, he's good. God is a good God, and he has provided a way for us to experience his forgiveness for our self-centeredness, our selfishness. Christ died for our sins. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish but have everlasting life. God wants to give us life. For God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but that the world through him might be saved. He didn't come in condemnation. He came in salvation and forgiveness. Now notice also in verse 5, Paul says that if we harden our hearts and do not accept God's forgiveness, then we incur the wrath of God on the judgment day. It's very simple. It's our choice. It's up to us as to whose judgment we choose. So judgment is inevitable. That's the first point. And the second point is this, is that we choose our judgment. It's our choice. It isn't imposed on us. It's simply our choice. We earn it. Verses 6 to 10. God who will render to each one according to his deeds eternal life to those who by patient continuance in doing good seek for glory, honor, and immortality. But to those who are self-seeking, those who are selfish, sinful, and do not obey the truth, but obey unrighteousness, they get indignation and wrath, tribulation and anguish on every soul of man who does evil, of the Jew first and also the Greek. But glory, honor, and peace to everyone who works what is good, to the Jew first and also to the Greek. Verse 6 in the Living Bible simply says, he will give each one whatever his deeds deserve. God knows. God knows you. He knows you inside out. He knows me inside out. He reads the intent of my heart. I can fool other people, but I cannot fool God. And this statement encapsulates the whole gospel message. Those who are self-seeking, those are selfish, but to those who are self-seeking and do not obey the truth. These people were so concerned about pleasing themselves that they ignored the truth of God's word. And when we do this, we choose our own judgment. Never complain on that day. Whatever you get, you will have deserved. And probably I'll be surprised how light my punishment is. This deals, this deals with the whole issue. How can a loving man condemn a person to hell? He doesn't. Man condemns himself by his own self-centeredness. And in the problems of life, the wars, the strife, the difficulties have all at their core the same cause. The one common ingredient of all is what? Every problem. At the core of every problem, every dispute is what? Selfishness, self-centeredness. We, in effect, choose our judgment. We do this in verse 4. It says, by despising the goodness of God, which leads to repentance. And often it's a hard thing. I always say to guys, when you're in the middle of a domestic with your wife, just stop and say these words. Honey, it doesn't matter. You win. What do you want? We'll do it your way. You'll stun them. I know Jane says to me now, don't try that. You've tried it once, it doesn't work. We know what is right, and we know this innately. And when we fail to do it, then we condemn ourselves. We cannot blame someone else or offer any excuses. We must take responsibility for our own actions. So firstly, judgment is inevitable. And number two, we choose our own judgment. Now, thirdly, and this is the good part, we are judged impartially. How do we get, we pride ourselves in New Zealand that we're not a third world country, that we have a judiciary that is impartial. Is it? Is it? I know some things, some judgments that have come down by people who've been pushing a barrow. And I know there are people sitting in this congregation who probably would agree with me that you don't always get justice. You get what people think. It's powerful what we think. It affects our bias of how we live. We aim for impartiality in this country. I don't think we always get it. In our own court system, we can, by definition, only get justice 50% of the time. Why? Because it's an adversarial system. One party says this, the other party says that. One party's going to win, one party's going to lose. So by definition, it's already faulted. to a 50% righteousness. If you don't like the district court judgment, you can appeal to the High Court, then to the Supreme Court, actually the Court of Appeal, and then the Supreme Court. And all the time you're looking to be a judge, you're looking to find a judge who will see your side of the argument. And the greatest question you will ever ask in life is, what is truth? What is truth? The same question was asked 2,000 years ago by a Roman governor called Pilate when he was sentencing Jesus. In John 18:38, he said, what is truth? How many times in your life have you longed to know the truth? As a parent with your kids, how often I've wondered, did you do it? No, he did it. No, I didn't do it. He did it. I just wish I'd had a CCTV that I could play back and find out who it really was. Would have changed my parenting completely. So how does God judge those people who have never had the opportunity to hear about Jesus or read the Bible? Fortunately for them, God is not only omnipotent, omnipresent, but he's also omniscient. And now, that is what do I mean by that? He's all-knowing. He knows everything. He knows the end from the beginning. He sees right into your heart. He knows what motivates you. He knows exactly what you were thinking. He knows what you did and what you said. He's all-knowing. Jesus said that not a hair on your head falls without God knowing. So if you're bored this morning, God knows a lot about you. There are some people God knows a lot about. Back to verses 12 to 14 in the Living Bible. It says, God will punish sin wherever it is found. He will punish the heathen when they sin, even though they never heard or had never had God's written laws. For down in their hearts they know right from wrong. God's laws are written within them. Their own conscience accuses them or sometimes excuses them. Great verses. I thank God for his word because it's so truthful. And so even what Paul is saying here is those who have never heard of the gospel of Jesus Christ will be judged in impartiality by the all-wise God who will take into account the way they live their lives. And verses 14 and 15 say that all man and woman have a God consciousness within their hearts, and their conscience bears witness to it. They are aware of God. Everybody out there will say they may not believe in God, but deep down they're aware that there is a God, that there is a beginning to the earth. Somebody made it. There was a designer somewhere. It just didn't happen. Nothing comes from nothing. It all had to come from something. It came from someone who, and I love how the Bible starts off in Genesis, in the beginning, God. In the beginning, God. There's no other rational answer to where we come from or what we do. So this answers two of our three questions. Why does a loving God condemn man to hell? He doesn't. What about those who've never known about God? God judges them because he knows their heart. Thirdly, I've been a good person. Won't I go to heaven when I die? Judgment is inevitable. We choose our judgment and we're judged in partiality. But the last point I want to leave with you is this. We're judged according to our faith. Verses 18 to 29. And to know his will and approve all things that are excellent, being instructed out of the law, and are confident that you yourself are a guide to the blind, a light to those who are in darkness, an instructor of the foolish, a teacher of babies, having a form of knowledge and truth in the law. Now, it carries on and says, you therefore who teach another, do you not teach yourself? You who preach that a man should not steal, do you steal? You who say do not commit adultery, do you commit adultery? You who abhor idols, do you rob temples? You who make your boast in the law, do you dishonor God through breaking the law? For the name of God is blasphemed amongst the Gentiles because of you, as it is written, for circumcision is indeed profitable if you keep the law. But if you don't, you are a breaker of the law. Your circumcision has become uncircumcision. And what he's really saying is this. You can have all the outward attributes of being a Christian. You can do all the things that you think a Christian should do, but that doesn't make you outside the judgment of God. For he is not a Jew who is one outwardly, nor is circumcision that which is outward in the flesh, but he is a Jew who is one inwardly. And circumcision is that of the heart in the spirit, not in the letter, whose praise is not from men, but from God. What Paul is saying is this. It doesn't matter what you do as an outside person. It's what you believe in your heart which matters. It's your relationship deep within your heart. When the rubber hits the road, it's who you are before God. It's your faith in him that really counts. It's a long passage, but it's been summed up in the last two verses. What Paul is saying is this: good works alone will not atone. He says, a real Jew is not one who bears the bodily marks of circumcision, but a real Jew is one whose heart is after God, because outward deeds flow from faith within your life. Romans 1 verse 17, the just shall live by faith. Faith. You know, it's so simple relating to God. Just believing and trusting and following his word. Ephesians 5:8 says, for by grace you are saved through faith, that not of yourselves, it is the gift of God. So we become hearers and then desire and then doers. Ephesians 1:13, in him you also trusted after you heard the word of truth, the gospel of salvation, in whom alone having believed you were sealed with the Holy Spirit of promise. Deep theological statements, but all saying the same thing. It's your faith, it's your heart towards God that really counts. We give our lives to Christ, which is hearing the word. So then faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word of God in Romans 10:17. And then Romans 10:9, that if you confess with your mouth the Lord Jesus and believe in your heart that God has raised him from the dead, you will be saved. Good works won't save you on the judgment day. but faith in Christ will. Therefore, we conclude that a man is justified by faith apart from the deeds of the law. It's not by obeying a set of rules that you're saved. It's by where your heart is towards God. It's all within your heart. That's really what the whole second chapter of Romans is all about. You know, God loves you with an everlasting love. Your relationship with God is something that no one can know or see, but it's deep within your heart. And in the middle of the deepest struggle of your life, you know that you can talk to God. He's right there. He's there to listen to you, to hear you, and to answer you. That's what it is about being a Christian. His word is constantly ministering life to our souls, constantly ministering life to where we're going, constantly ministering life in the midst of all the trials and all the challenges we have in life. It is appointed unto man once to die. After death, the judgment. I'd be sad to die. Lots of things I want to achieve yet. Lots of things we want to achieve as a church. I want to see those things come to pass. And then we can sit back and see God. In the end, God's got it in control, which is fantastic. Father, we talked a lot today about judgment, but we thank God that you are on the throne, that you judge. You judge with impartiality, but you judge in truth. We thank you for that. We thank you that we have the ability to turn to you and know that we are judged with perfection. We thank you for that. May your blessing be upon us, that we know that one day when we stand before you, we're going to know truth. We thank you for that in Jesus' name. Amen.